Being able to bounce back, but that's resiliency.
Bounce back. All right.
We learned that Hurricane Katrina was a complex failure. This means that so many things went wrong at the same time.
The French Quarter is right on that curve there, right?
Yeah, look, the FQ.
Okay.
Right here. So the French Quarter is going to stay dry because remember, back in the day, the French Quarter is the original city of New Orleans.
Among these things was the role that the government didn't have in the hurricane. We also conducted research projects. My project was studying the history of slavery and the issue of race in New Orleans.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Delta Flight 1491.
And the dances continued in Congo Square off and on for a long time, and they closed it in 1870. When Louis Armstrong went to Ghana in 1956, he went back there and he listened to the music and he said, I know this is where our music came from.
To me, the French Quarter was to New Orleans as Central Park is to New York City. Everything just looked so perfect. And if you were a tourist, you wouldn't ever say that something bad had happened in the whole city.
Like that, but that's the levee that broke for the Lord Nightmare.
Hurricanes come every year, and people stay. No one expected the levees to break.
Hurricane Katrina was not even at the highest level of destruction that it could have been. It was a Category 3 hurricane, and this points at the fact that it was a man-made disaster. One example of this is the Mystical, which was a ship route which cut through the natural barrier which protected New Orleans from the ocean water. If that hadn't been done, then who knows how many lives would have been saved, how many homes would have been saved.
Eventually, if it doesn't get fixed, all of this will be underwater.
Eventually, yeah.
helping to rebuild the ninth ward after the levees broke.
We had days of seeing this big white cloud barreling down.
A lot of students had to be moved from the schools they attended before Katrina due to the fact that the schools were flooded.
When I evacuated, I had lots of money. I mean, lots of money, more than they had. You know, I'm rich compared to them, you know. And so when I left, I took my little 3 days worth of things and I went. And then, you know, you heard all of this and couldn't, you know, my school was gone. That was the biggest dilemma.
So a lot of education problems arose, such as lack of funding for all the students that had to be moved into one school building because the old school building was flooded.
Appreciate the students of community leader because the restaurant that she worked in and now owns was the first restaurant to be integrated in New Orleans. And many civil rights activists and political leaders met in her restaurant to discuss planning and many different aspects that went into the civil rights process. And one thing that I liked about meeting Leah Chase was that she described to us how it didn't matter to her what complexion a person, whether white, black, yellow, red. Everybody was the same when it came to Doogie Chases, and she welcomed everybody with the same kindness.
Not only was the food amazing, but we had a chance to meet someone that had learned and had lived through so much history.
Young people have so much going for them today, but with so much going for you, so much is expected of young people today. I don't know how they did it. We could not have done all of this when we were coming up. We didn't have it to do.
We met with a wide variety of people, and they all had a lot of different opinions about whether the national media had portrayed what happened accurately.
Journalists in New Orleans had a hard time reporting about Katrina in the aftermath because they were people who had homes in New Orleans destroyed, and it was emotional for them.
Jarvis DeBay was an editor of the Times-Picayune whom we met in New Orleans.
When writing about Katrina, did you often find yourself being biased?
Yes, biased toward people who lived here, biased toward people who had suffered.
Journalists and bloggers today are working in exposing the truths about Hurricane Katrina.
We fortunately had lunch with a journalist named Karen Gabois.
Karen talked about how she went to find people who still hadn't gone back to their homes.
A few clinics are being opened in New Orleans, and they're being funded by the community and not by the government.
It has been up to the citizens themselves and residents of New Orleans to take it in their own hands to make sure that people have health care coverage.
These clinics serve almost everybody in the neighborhood who needs help.
The people that we met in New Orleans seemed really outspoken.
I saw that the young people in New Orleans were a lot like the young people in Harlem. I did see an aspect of aspiration and hope in a lot of the young people there that I don't really see in Harlem.
As a part of the class, we do service projects. We decided to do workshops as a community service instead of building a house or cleaning up a school because we felt that these workshops would really affect them in a larger way. We brainstormed about different barriers that we face day to day, and we came up with racism, media, and really understanding ourselves. And we made workshops with different icebreakers and different activities that address these issues. We found it important to come and talk about issues that we face every day because those three things affect young people everywhere.
Out of my whole class, we only have 2 black girls in the whole 10th grade. And we're the only ones that are not. I think they kind of expect us to fail sometimes. That's the vibe that I get from them.
When we had to do the emotional bank thing,
I mean, I would like to use that as my everyday because I feel like that alone just helped me, realize who I am.
So there's different attitudes because sometimes you don't see your attitude until you're on the outside looking in. You're like, oh, that's me, I need to change that. Like, some people really don't realize how they act or what they do and how it affects other people.
What we wanted to do was create each one take-home program to create a ripple effect throughout that community about how to face racism and about how to face the media and how to really interpret the media so that everybody will be able to benefit from what we've learned.
This is something that not only the youth in New Orleans benefited from, but Heath as well, because we put a lot of work into each of the workshops. This is something that I'm sure will be very useful in the future as well. The Roots of Music School is particularly one of my favorite places that we visited, and it does so much in preserving the musical legacy of New Orleans and helping children as well.
From the time that we spent in New Orleans, art seems to be a very prominent feature of the culture there. It seems to be a building block that thrives throughout.
The Mardi Gras Indians are African American community leaders. During slavery, when an enslaved person would escape, the Native American people would allow them to live in their tribe and in their community. The dancing and the clothes and part of the culture was adopted by the African Americans and passed on throughout the generations.
Hello. Welcome to the House of Dance and Feathers.
House of Dance and Feathers is basically a museum of artifacts and history about the legacy of people like the Mardi Gras Indians. I think with so many people displaced, they needed places like the House of Dance and Feathers to have some sort of connection to their history. What inspired me most was the way New Orleans youth embraced their culture. They had no problem incorporating it into their modern day lives.
Fight for your freedom!
I always thought that there would be
My goal when I was here was to ask questions and to just speak up generally, and then I think I really did do well on that.
I learned that when I listen more, I learn more.
What I'll take home is just like confidence.
Before getting here was that I need to learn how to take a step back and listen to what others are saying.
My challenge was to be more open-minded and try new things.
Through the project, I learned that hope and resiliency are the last two things that people should ever lose, because at the end of the day, they are the two things that will help us build up from disaster and from all the bad mistakes that we make in life.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh.